thing in itself is a waste.
Right. Yes.
You take some things from it, but the worst case, you learn how not to do things in future. So nothing in itself is a waste. Career is not linear.
You're right.
And I think most people, it's not a linear journey. You've been with yourself the longest, people, for the same opportunities, then you just need to humble yourself and bring your A game. So that's something to keep in mind. I remember when I first moved to Spain, it was even the little things that you take for granted, like just walk into a supermarket that you're used to and you know where to pick your stuff from. And please don't laugh. But for the first couple of months in Spain, I was actually cooking with baking soda, because one of those days I went to the supermarket and I'm like, oh, what is salt in Spanish? And I don't think I had network. And I remember, sodium. Okay, salt is sodium.
Oh, honey.
I just think maybe something sexual. And then one day, I don't really complain to my friend, like, anytime I cook, like, it bubbles, like, I just put salt and start bubbling. I'm like, okay, maybe that's how their salt is made.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
You're listening to BsquaredC, a podcast amplifying the stories of Black women in the corporate world. I'm your host, Nancy Kashoshe. Let's get started.
Iretide, hi.
Hi, Nancy. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine.
It is lovely to have you on the podcast. Welcome to BsquaredC.
It's my pleasure as well. My absolute pleasure to be chatting with you this lovely morning.
All right, Iretide, let's start with your name. I'm curious about it. The name Iretide, what does it mean?
So it's Iretide, and trust me, you're absolutely doing better than some other people in terms of pronouncing it. But it means it's It's from the southwest of Nigeria, so I'm Yoruba, and it means goodness has come. And when my mom gave me that name, because I think she said she's the one that she's had it even before I was born, it wasn't a unique name. Yeah, so it means goodness has come, or some people will say blessings have come.
I love it.
So it just really depends. Yes.
Oh, that is beautiful. And if blessings come your way, you're right there.
No, I'll be fair. I think
they are coming.
No. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much. But I think I consider myself blessed, honestly. I don't think anybody's life is perfect, but for the most part, I would say yes. If I consider where I am now, I would say I am blessed. Yeah.
That is beautiful. I love it. Thanks. All right. So tell me, what was the highlight of your last week?
What was the highlight? Can I give you two? Do you want better?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so there are two highlights of my week. Let me start with the most recent, which was yesterday. Friendship is a very huge part of my life, especially female friendships.
Yeah.
And I spoke to, I think, 3 of my friends yesterday for hours on end. And one of them actually came over to my house. She was having a hard time, or she had a difficult week. And I said, you know what? Just come over tonight. Let's have some pizza, chicken, unhealthy food, and down in with vodka.
I love it.
A nice evening, and that's what we did. The second highlight of my week is there's this thing I do now where I wake up and for the first couple of minutes I just sit there and I try to see what bubbles up in terms of my thoughts. I call it silent time. Because I find that, there's so much noise, especially even internal noise where you just take a lot and take a lot and take a lot in all day, and then you really don't have time to process. So I just sit there and whatever bubbles up, I journal about it as well. So those are the highlights of my week.
I love that. So I recently started trying to also integrate being like meditative in my life. And I use this app called Balance. Have you ever heard of it?
I know Balance and I know Headspace.
Yes, Headspace is probably the most popular one out there. Yeah. No, I love it because it has all of these different types of meditations, right? My favorite one is the love and kindness. So offering love and kindness to yourself. right?
That's very interesting.
Yeah. And part of it is, so you go through breathing controls, and then, I find that it does give me kind of a moment of pause at the beginning of my day. And then,
It does.
okay,
It
yeah.
does. And it's very important, like I said, because the
Mm-hmm.
world is getting, everybody's fighting for your attention,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
feeding you things you even have no control over. If you see the way social media works, like it used to be, I Google or I check and I go in search of the information, right? And
Right.
you're constantly being fed with no control. So whether it's meditating, whether it's just taking time to, I call it quiet your spirit as well.
Yeah.
It's very, very important
That is
as well.
beautiful. And the girlfriend time, hey, it's needed.
It is. It is. It
Needed
is
time and again,
always,
time and again.
always.
And if you
Yeah,
remember our first chat, right, this was the birth of B-squared C as well, girlfriend
you
time.
told me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you told me.
I love that for you. Okay, let's get into your story. By the way, should I call you Iretide throughout, or
Yes,
what do
yes,
you
you can
go
call
by?
me Ire actually. Some call
Ire.
me Ire,
Okay.
so you can call me Ire today. But I told you I like the East African or South African accent, so I really say the way you like Ire today. So maybe call me that just because
Iretide.
I like how it
Iretide.
sounds.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with the full one.
yeah.
So, Iretide, can you introduce yourself to our audience? Just a little bit about yourself, and then tell us 3 words that describe you and why.
Interesting. So Ire today, as Nancy has already said several times in this podcast. I'm from the southwestern part of Nigeria. I grew up in a city called Ibadan,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm currently living in London,
Mm-hmm.
UK. Due to work, I moved here after my MBA in Spain. I love traveling. That's non-career related things. I actually love introspecting a lot. I love having conversations like this because I
Mm-hmm.
get to also learn about other people. And if I say 3 words that describe me, I would say creative.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I would typically think about, I don't want to use out of the box. It sounds very cliche. But typically, like, I'll find ways to solve a problem,
Yeah.
right? In a way that's not typically always conventional.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that most times people think about creative from the context of like the arts and creative people, but I
Right.
don't think that's correct. And, anybody can actually be creative.
Right.
I'll describe myself as very adaptable as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that before I get to the adaptability
Yeah.
stage, though, I might just hesitate and complain. But once I just,
Yeah.
decide to do it,
You
you'll be
go through
very
the
surprised how
motions
quick,
first, right?
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
how quick,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I actually, adjust. So I'm very adaptable. I think it's one of my strengths as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the third would be, I'm very determined as well. If I
Determined.
really want something,
Mm-hmm.
like I would get it ultimately, honestly.
Yeah.
So I'll say those are the three words I'll use to describe myself.
I love them, and they are actually reminiscent of some other conversations I have had, and then it had gone into like, is this a Nigerian thing?
Is it though? Really?
No,
I don't know.
the first one being a creative problem solver,
Yeah,
right? Just like, I'm going to make it happen.
No, but the thing is, I think you should also look at it in the context of maybe, honestly, maybe now that I think about it, in Nigeria, you're not given anything, and
No.
people are really
Mm-hmm.
ingenious, right? So you
Right.
have to find a way to solve your own problems, and I think maybe that's it, right? So whether it's like providing your own power supply or your own water, like so. Sadly, as it is with other most African countries, the government is not responsible for you. So you just have to find a way to be many things to yourself
Yeah.
as well. So
Yeah. So you're
maybe that's why
entrepreneurs
you
by
find that connection with
necessity.
Nigerians. Kind of, yeah. And it just becomes like a part of you.
No, I think we all know the phrase. What was that? Naija no dey carry last.
No, never. We
Never.
don't carry last. No, we
Never.
don't carry last.
I love it. No, I love all my Nigerian sisters when I meet you guys. Your energy, I'm just like, there's something happening there that is very like.
There is. Yeah, there is.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So let's get into your career. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
Several things, to be honest.
What is
I
it?
think
Hey, tell me.
I think I've gone through the motions. At some point, I think I wanted to be an actress.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because
Oh,
I did like Genevieve Energy a lot when I was
we
growing up.
all
I don't know
grew
if
up
you know
with
her.
Genevieve. Of course.
Yeah. So I really like that. So at some point, I wanted to be an actress. At some point, also, I wanted to be a cardiologist or neurosurgeon. And
Okay.
that's because one of my favorite authors when I was young was Sidney Sheldon. And he had this, one of the books I read was Nothing Lasts Forever. And
Mm-hmm.
the theme was around three female doctors, actually,
Right. Mm-hmm.
in a very male dominated world
Mm-hmm.
in the 90s, I think. The book was in the 90s. And
Right.
so my favorite one was Paige Taylor, but I don't remember if she was the cardiologist or neurosurgeon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but quickly, I think when I got to senior secondary school, I didn't like biology. I like maths, I like the sciences,
Yeah.
so that was even
Mm-hmm.
more for me. Then a third thing I wanted to be, which is what I still love, and that my mom just encouraged me to lean in more to my
Okay.
science class.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my science side, because in Nigeria, I think it's really rigid, the education system. So you're
Of
put
course.
in a box. So it's either you're in science or you're in arts or you're in the social sciences. And I
Mm-hmm.
really did like a blend of both, right?
Right.
I like government and I loved literature and I loved maths and I was good at English, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I also loved chemistry. But again, you're forced to choose. So after my junior secondary school, I was like, I do know I had like an A in maths and sciences, but I think I want to do law. And in her wisdom, I would say, and which I don't regret actually, she just said, you know what, science is more fluid. It's easy to
Yeah.
move from
You can
there
do more
to
with it.
art than to do it on the flip side. So why don't you just do um engineering, which is
Right.
what I ended up doing, and which they had even conditioned me to do from when I was young, because I liked maths and I was good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad studied engineering, so they would always call me like engineer since I was young. So I ended up studying
Studying
engineering.
engineering.
Yeah.
So a couple of things stand out for me from that. The first is you were seeing examples of things that you wanted to be around you, right? So role models.
That's really
I mean,
interesting. Yeah.
Genevieve is okay, Genevieve on TV,
True. Fair enough.
But I think role models are quite important, right? So then when you come to be where we are at in the corporate world, thinking about seeing people like us in the places that we want to go to is it's still quite important. It was important when we were younger. It's still
It
important
was.
now. Yeah. So you wanted to mix it up somewhere there as well. And and this rigidness, right, of career paths, of course, we're all familiar with it. And parents don't give
Yeah.
you a lot of choices, right?
No, you're a
And
failure if you are not a doctor, lawyer, or I think that's changing now with
it's
social
changing
media
a
and
bit, but I
all that.
appreciate their experience and perspective of that, right?
Sure.
Because I think that these disciplines give you a good base, right?
They do.
And what I appreciate about how my journey has gone is that I did end up in an education system that allowed me to, well, have that base, but also grow out of it, right? I think for most of us who stay on the continent, who stay in that environment, right, you may get just in that path and that's it.
Very true.
But it doesn't have to be it. So what I consider my base education now is pretty much like it was a problem solving toolkit that I learned,
And
right?
this was the US, right?
Yes, so I'm a scientist by training and you're an engineer by training, right? And I see
By
hints of
training.
it in my life now, even though I don't work in this directly in the space anymore. Do you have that at all?
It doesn't really leave you, right?
Yeah.
Just that, approach to the analytical approach to
Right.
problem solving, I think. Yeah. So there are also things you can always draw. And I think that's why if you look at a career is not linear.
Right.
And I think most people, it's not a linear journey, right? So you can take detours, but ultimately you can always draw, whether you don't know it, because like you said, you find yourself, applying themes from your science journey even to whatever you do now. And you can always draw. So nothing is, if you look at it from that perspective, nothing in itself is a waste.
Right. Yes.
You take some things from it, but the worst case, you learn how not to do things in future. So nothing in itself is a waste.
You know what? That is a very actually unique perspective. You don't see that around a lot, right? I think that people just get really stuck on a path and then sometimes they stay in it because they think, oh, I've worked so hard in it, right? Like sunk costs basically to me. And then they never leave it and try to be something else or to evolve into something else that they have discovered about themselves, right? And I think we're all socially conditioned to think, even the corporate career, we're socially conditioned to think of it as linear. You go from here, it's called climbing the ladder for a reason.
It is. And I would be honest, I think for the longest time as well, I thought about it from their perspective and framed my career from their perspective, and almost like, oh, I want to spend 2 years doing this, and the next 3 years I want to make manager, and the next 3 years I want to make senior manager. And the problem or the challenge with that is you really are not prioritizing learning.
Yeah.
It's more of not what I can take from this role or who am I becoming, like by virtue of maybe taking this opportunity. But it's like you're ticking, like, just ticking boxes. And that's the disadvantage of the linear ladder. And I think that's maybe why people also get frustrated, because if you come into a company like, oh, and I get it, people need to grow, people need to progress.
Absolutely.
Okay, you need to get this in maybe 2 years, get to the next level, and then people don't achieve that, even if they're not ready for that, and they become very frustrated, right? But I think if you reframe it from your career is long, and even now, it's as tech is, getting more prevalent, it's going to be more abridged, right? So this more of, think about like a career portfolio. I think that's what I'm thinking of. So like, okay, I did this, he did this, and ultimately a theme would always come up. So a theme will come up. You find that there are commonalities even in the various roles you hold, that they stay true to your core. Like there are things in those roles that you enjoy the most, and I think that's a better way to look at it than just like a linear journey with ticking boxes.
So then now let's go further into your career. So I'm curious how you have evolved. So you studied engineering, then what happened? Walk us through some of the highlights and the steps that you've taken to be where you are now.
Yeah, of course. So I studied engineering, but I disliked engineering. At least the version of the one I took, which was electrical electronics engineering, and I just couldn't wrap my head around turbining and nothings. And I honestly, when I say, I just knew I didn't want to practice.
Right.
So I didn't enjoy it. I didn't have a good time studying it as well. But in my 4th year in university, one of the requirements is to undergo a 6 months internship, graduate internship. And I was privileged to do that in Ericsson, right? And it was a multinational, professional people. And it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning. Like when you see people do things, it makes you want to aspire to it as well. It shows you what is possible, right? And I remember, even though I wasn't in the account management role in Ericsson, I worked with civil projects and facilitated the penetration of mobile broadband, in Nigeria. So by putting up base stations, and the people that I interacted with, some of them were key account managers. They were on the technical side and the business side, and I really admired that because they would interact with customers. And MTN, that was the largest in Nigeria, and I like, Emeka, like, I like this in the future, and this is something I potentially want to do. And I think he did advise that, of course, if you're selling anything to a customer and it's technical, you want to learn about that first. So potentially what you could do is, maybe start out in a technical role, like get the fundamentals of what you want to manage for the customer or what you want to sell. And then potentially you can get an MBA. So I think he was the first person that actually put that MBA in me. Because he went to Harvard, I think.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know what? I could do this. If I need to sacrifice 2 years technical, like getting into the details,
I
can, right? So, and that wasn't even electrical electronics. It was mobile broadband, right? So it was different. I was like, I could do it. And so my plan then was finish university, go back to Ericsson by any means. And I actually built like a network of people that I thought like were really supportive of me. And that was my plan, right? So in Nigeria, you do this mandatory national year service.
Yeah. I have heard of your national service in Nigeria. So what did you do with your national service?
So for the national service, I was posted to Lagos, and Ericsson had evolved, and that's just to show you that things changed. So it wasn't the massive, company. I think they had downsized, and the opportunity I wanted wasn't, available.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I ended up working with a startup that was in the process of launching a payment product. I believe it was with them. So I worked majorly in business development, liaising with the tech guys that were building or working on the technical side of the product, actually doing a bit of marketing as well, posting on blogs for it was a financial product, so posting about savings and investing. So that was my role. And then I just was applying to graduate roles, honestly. I think for me, and I would say for most graduates, you don't, then just getting a job is a priority. I was clear that I couldn't go for masters, which was an option that was available to some people, because I knew I'm definitely not doing this
masters
in Nigeria.
in engineering. You already knew I'm
even
getting
masters in engineering and masters in Nigeria, because I wanted an MBA, and back to Emeka
there
and
you go.
Ericsson was MBA from an Ivy League school.
Right.
So that was in my head. So I was applying to graduate roles, right? You don't have you just apply everywhere. Bank, I need a job.
Right.
That's especially for me, that I knew I wasn't tethered to engineering.
Right.
And so I was privileged again to get into Baker Hughes as a field engineer.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, you were walking out.
As a field engineer, right? But then I still remember Emeka as and what was attractive about the program was it was a 3-year program in the field, where you were in one of the product lines, and after those 3 years, you could drive your career in any direction you wanted. So perhaps that was moving into sales, business development, staying in the field. So it was a program that was developed, and it was really cool. So that's what that's how I got into Baker. But
so
again,
were you working directly with customers? I imagine, right? Field service is going to customer sites.
Field service is being on an offshore rig.
On an offshore
in
rig.
the middle of onshore, offshore actually, but there are typically customer representatives on site. So yes, you do liaise with customers, because in that capacity you are helping them deliver a service, because we had tools that were used in the extraction of oil and gas.
Right.
So you are the technical expert, and then the customer representative on the field is the middleman between you and his company. So of course you need to also understand the tools and services you are offering to be able to upsell as well to the customer, because sometimes they want some features, and then you say, oh, we have a tool that can do that, or we have a service that can do that, and you sow that seed, then sales can take it up from there in town. So it's not a sales role, but yeah, you had some interaction with the customer.
But now you have this MBA in the back of your mind, right?
Yes. So again, I joined the oil and gas industry, and then the promise of the program isn't really what's going to be, because I started working with Baker Hughes in 2016 after the national service, and then the industry goes bust, right? So there's cutbacks, there's massive layoffs, massive layoffs, right? Nobody is it's no trainings. You are just in keep the lights on mode, right? So bare minimum money, revenue. There's no fancy trainings. All of that is frozen, right? So it didn't look quite appealing as much, because then as well. So, but thankfully, I was still able to transition to sales or account management briefly, and then I also just thought, you know what, I've been ruminating on going for my MBA. A year prior, I was like, is this the right time? I think mentally, again, going back to my ticking boxes, I think I just thought, you know what, I'll spend 5 years here, and I think potentially I would go for my MBA. And I started thinking about the MBA, which is a lot, right? Because it's very expensive. You're deciding goals. Do I want 2 years? Do I want 1 year? Decisions to make.
Right.
And yeah, I I did that in 2021. To be honest, I did pray as well. I believe in God. Just to
Oh,
put
is
that
it?
out there.
Okay,
I didn't,
okay.
and I didn't want a situation where I'd heard about cases where, students would travel and they really leave it's like you go to a new country, but the country doesn't pass through you. Do you get what I
Right.
mean? Like you're
Mm-hmm.
just there, but you are not there. And I
Yeah.
didn't want to go to school under those conditions. So I
Those
think I was
transitions are
very,
hard. No, so I think you have to have something that anchors you, right? And for you, it
yeah,
seems it's
yeah.
faith.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I when I was decided, I just said, you know what, God, please, if I'm going to go, if you think this is the right time,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't want to struggle, right? I
Okay.
really don't want to be a
Mm-hmm.
struggling
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
student. So, yeah, 2021,
So
I
can you
went for
share
my
a
MBA
bit
in
of
Spain.
your MBA exploration experience? Did you just know the schools you wanted to go to? I'm pretty sure there are lots of people listening who may be also thinking about this right now, right? How did you go from the application process and navigate that to eventually landing in Spain?
So, I'd been thinking of, like I said earlier, doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think 2020, I was at work and I think there was just a trigger. And I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of putting this off, and I just started searching for schools. I think I'd signed up for GMAT a year earlier.
Uh-huh.
So the way I approach this, and maybe I'll come back to this to answer, and then is typically when I am interested in something, I start surrounding myself at least with cues of that thing. So probably I sign up for a course. I
Mm-hmm.
follow people on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
right? To see what they're saying about it. So the MBA, why I said that in relation to the MBA, I think I'd sign up for GMAT. Like, okay, you want to go for an MBA, the basic requirement is at least you have to have a GMAT.
Right.
And when you put your details on their database, you also
Mm-hmm.
contend that some schools can target you because they also do a lot of marketing
Marketing.
for
Mm-hmm.
them. Yeah, so I remember that the requirements I'd picked up, and Amazon calls this working backwards. That's how I approach issues, but I didn't know that was the term for it is.
Right.
Okay, what do I want from an MBA? I decided on 1 year
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want to. There's the opportunity cost of 2 years.
Right.
I also wanted Europe for some
Mm-hmm.
reason because I'd applied in the past for an American visa and I was denied. And I'm like, you know what? I can't deal with these people.
Trauma. Trauma. No, traumatized
Exactly.
you. American immigration.
Exactly. I'm like, nah. So I don't want to take the chance of like,
Yeah.
focusing on going to the US. I'm like, okay, one year MBA, most likely Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and January to December, so I can also take part in an internship.
Right.
So the first school I applied to, I got in, but that was going to start in September,
Mm-hmm.
and it was going to be like rush. So I started thinking, I don't have enough money for this right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen? Should I go for it? Are there student loans accessible that I could leverage?
Mm-hmm.
But then back to people, attended I think the year prior, I'd attended a conference in Lagos where I'd met the head of, it was a partner, I think the managing partner of Bain
Yeah.
and Company in Lagos.
Mm-hmm.
And I just walked up to him after, and again, shout out to my friends because I was like, oh, I don't want to go. And they went with me for that
I
event
love
because
it.
I think I saw that I was going to be there.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know what? This is somebody I think I should talk to. But last minute, I checked in. I'm like, no, I don't think I want to talk to this guy. And I'm like, you
Yeah.
know what? We came here for this. And so I had a chat with him and we kept in touch. So when I was considering taking that offer, I called him up as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, this is what I'm considering. I got this offer from this school. It's September. What do you think? And it says, you know what? If you're going to do an MBA, just go hard or go home, right? In
Right.
terms of like, and not that this school was bad, but it just said, go to a more reputable
Mm-hmm.
go to a school that they have a relationship with at least a network of companies such that they recruit directly just to make your life easier. And
Mm-hmm.
go to, Europe where it's more diverse and you can leverage the perspective of your classmates, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So why not do that? So I let that go, even though I didn't have another insight. I thought it made sense. And I just kept applying. So I'd applied to NSID, I didn't get in. I was like, you know what? Um, I'm just going to. I don't even know what to do.
Are you still
uh,
heartbroken about INSEAD?
you know, I'm
Okay,
so
good.
glad I didn't go there. No, and this is no shade. And I'm telling you why I said I'm so glad I didn't go there. I'm so glad I didn't go there because it was COVID. It was during COVID period. I probably have
Ah,
done Fountain Blue. It was more, there were more harsher restrictions in 2021 when I went for my NDA
right.
compared to Madrid that I ended up going to, which was more open and free, and we had in-person classes. So that was one. So anyway, back to how I didn't get, so I'm just trying to also say that there can be disappointments along the way of achieving
Absolutely.
your
Yes, yes,
goals.
yes. That's the path,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but you just need to. So I didn't get into INSID, and somebody reached out from IE. She had reached out previously.
Right.
I, to be honest, Spain wasn't on my radar. I'd never been to Spain. I love traveling. It wasn't. I'd never like coveted going to Spain. I didn't know much about Spain.
Right.
Right. So when she reached out, I said, okay, potentially this could work, and then it did work out. To cut the long story short, and that's how I
Yeah.
found myself in Spain.
Okay, okay. So a couple of lessons from this chapter, right? First off, I think I love the slow start, right? Of like the do something. Yeah. You
Yeah,
have this
yeah,
big goal of going
yeah,
somewhere,
yeah,
but you start something. You registered for the GMAT, right?
yeah.
It doesn't
Exactly.
always have to be like, hard and heavy from the beginning. And I think
No,
just starting is already taking a good step, right? The second thing
exactly.
is I love your networking skills.
Because it seems people say networking, it seems very transactional, and I'm not a transactional person.
What are you, a
I'm not.
relational person?
I'm a relational person.
That's
I'm
actually
very
what
relational.
networking should be, right? I
Yeah,
think
but
that there are many different, no, I think I really do think that when you do it transactionally, right? Yes, it gets you where you want to go, but does it have long lasting value for you?
mm,
Because when
mm,
people say your
mm,
network is your net worth, what they really mean is that you continuously surround yourself with people who
yeah,
are, an addition to your life. And that's what it should be. So don't ever let people like when people say this, it shouldn't be. When it is, it's very selfish and it gets you, yes, that one step you want, maybe
yeah.
you get it, but does it take you the long way?
And while you were speaking, you did make a point, which is, you're going along. And peers are very important in networking. I
Yes.
know that people think
Hmm.
about networking from the mentors are fine, right? But it's like,
They should be.
okay, that's where I want to be. Let me go meet the person to see how we could help. But that's fine. But remember in this story as well, my friend supported me. Was
Yes.
I think that's somebody I could potentially talk to. And I don't think that if they went with me, I probably would have had like the balls. I told you I chickened out like
Yeah.
the last name.
You're like not gonna
So
talk to him. No.
yeah, exactly. So just to stress, it's very important,
Yeah.
especially in your career journey, to support your peers and friends as well, because these
Hey.
are the CEOs and the MDs of tomorrow. So,
Mm-hmm.
and these are people that you're growing with as well. These are people that you have similar challenges, you have
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
similar problems. They can relate to you, and it feels less transactional, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you think about networking like the way I do. So
I
it's more
love that.
relational
So peers are
yeah,
so
very
important, right?
important.
I call mine my village, right? I'm
Yeah,
like, my village would never.
yeah. Some people call it kitchen table. I think Michelle Obama calls
Okay,
as
your kitchen
the
oh,
kitchen
I love
table.
that.
Yeah.
So I think people
Yeah.
sometimes they can not value that as much as the upwards
Up.
networking,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
upwards experience
Exactly.
networking. But for me, my village has bbeen so critical at every step that I have taken, right?
Sometimes you forget that I was the one that like or wherever I am now, you've been with yourself the longest. Like I must have had some value or some skill to get what I wanted up till now.
Right.
But then challenging situations, you're looking for a new job, you're trying to pivot, you're getting rejections, you lose your confidence,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's very important, like you had, for your friends to remind you of who you are
Yeah,
and make you stay true to yourself. So that's
absolutely.
also very important. You need to surround yourself with people that remind you. And I've had situations in my life where I'm so grateful that I was reminded of who I am when I
Mm,
almost forgot. So
yeah.
really great friends you have, or great village, as you call them. Your village, la village. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So MBA Spain, tell me about getting out of the MBA and starting your post MBA career.
Oh my God. Again, back to when I was trying to process.
Mm-hmm.
Cost was something, of course, I considered, and I always like to get value for money. I'm just like, I love numbers,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to make sense. And I wanted to manage my expectations like, okay, this thing I'm going to do, am I actually going to be rewarded for it? Because most people consider the cost of the MBA, but if you're in a comfortable job like I was, I really had a cushy job. Oil and gas is one of the highest paying sectors in Nigeria, or it was then. Tech has blown them out of the water now.
Yeah.
But then I needed to make sure that it would work out somehow, or that I won't.
It would enhance your career.
Exactly. Enhance financially. Because if I'm dropping like 100 grand, 70 grand on a
The
degree.
opportunity cost,
like. So, exactly. And on opportunity cost, people think about the opportunity cost of like, okay, I'm putting in this money, but you don't think about what you also lose if you're staying in your job.
Right.
So that's something you actually should even add.
Yeah.
So I really did research on, is this worth it? And, people that it doesn't work out for would always lean to the opposite side, but I try to keep myself very informed on
either
on
side.
both levels. Exactly. So when I got into the MBA, again, working backwards from what I wanted, I knew I wanted to leave the energy industry, at least as at then, oil and gas, because I was just over my career being tied to the price of oil prices, right? Oh, it's 70 or it's 100. And so I wanted to leave, but I also thought that it was a very niche industry, and then bringing transferable skills is, the market will value that, but when you're in a niche industry as well, it can be difficult. And in MBA, they call it the jump. So I was trying to make a triple jump. And what that means simply is I was trying to change geography, change industry, and also change my role function as well. So, which makes it harder. So what I started doing was applying. I had an idea of the type of roles that I wanted to do and the type of companies I wanted to do. And of course, disappointment. Trust me, job hunting will
it will get to you.
Exactly. And even for MBA students. So let me just say this, because people go in with I think this expectation that, I have I'm going for an MBA and doors are just going to walls and open and there's going to be a red carpet, and it's not true. Firstly, you need to understand that you are in a cohort of other talented people.
Right.
And, one of my professors said this thing that stood out, and you are not really unique in terms of what you want. So most MBA students want to end up
they all want to be consultants at McKinsey.
Exactly. Or investment banking, right? Or tech. Maybe few, they would go on to start their businesses. So if you think about the fact that I'm competing with these people for the same opportunities, then you just need to humble yourself and, bring your A game. So that's something to keep in mind that I need to actually emphasize. It's not a walk in the park, and I don't think anything is actually. Just the fact that you have some credentials means that doors are going to suddenly open for you now.
Yeah.
And so I started applying, rejections, back to discouragement, and sometimes you think maybe just go through. And I have nothing against humble beginnings, but I generally don't think, and I see this happen a lot, where people relocate and they need to start from scratch. But while that is okay, it's also possible to know that that doesn't have to be the situation, right? Where you have to start from the trenches and your experience somehow, because you are from Africa, doesn't count.
We have multiple guests on this topic actually who we're talking about this.
So I have nothing against humble beginnings. Sometimes you need to go back to go forward. That's fine, right? Just to stress that. But I see that some people, that's the only mentality they have. Like, you know what? I think I need to start from the rung of the bottom of the rung again. And while that is okay in some cases, you're trying to maybe build, you're trying to learn about something you have no absolute idea about. Yes, you need to maybe step down to go forward. It's not in all cases. So I just continued applying, right? I had my roles and goals in line, but again, at some point when you just get tired, you start opening yourself to things that you don't even want or even originally consider. But thankfully, I landed in one of the companies I was targeting, which was Amazon, and yeah.
Eventually.
Eventually.
I think it's such an interesting process, this transition, right, from one geography to another. So you're absolutely right in that you don't necessarily have to go back, right?
Yeah.
If you do, though, keep your eye on the price, right? Keep your eye on the price. Know that this is a step. This is only a side step, but keep working towards the goal. And yeah, I think we definitely have had great conversations on this podcast about this value of your experience before because you come from somewhere else, right? You should never think of it as that. It's you reframe that experience into the new environment.
Correct, absolutely.
And that's how you move forward as well. Love it. Okay. So then Amazon, did you immediately go to the UK? Was it Amazon UK or?
Yeah. So Amazon UK. So that's how I got into London.
So how long have you been?
Oh, no. Actually, let me backtrack because that's how I met Akosua. So I worked briefly in Berlin. I did forget that part. Maybe I didn't like that city.
Memories?
So yeah. So I got a job initially as a key account manager with Zalando. It's a e-commerce fashion platform. But then I left after I don't think I even spent up to 6 months with them, and then moved to Amazon UK. Yeah. So that was my journey.
Well, I'm glad that you went to Zalando because that's where you met Akoshwa, and that's why we're here.
And that's how I know you. Yeah. See, nothing is a waste, people. Nothing is a waste.
Nothing is a waste. Exactly. Nothing is a waste at all, right? So how long have you now been in the UK?
Over 2 years. So I'll say 2 years, 2 months-ish.
And what kind of role do you do?
Right now, I am I work with the capacity planning team. Okay. So it's a subset of supply chain, or it's a supply chain organization. And what we do is we ensure that we have enough capacity in terms of workforce to meet demand. So it's a sort of demand planning.
Right.
As well. Yeah, just ensuring that you have everything required to be able to meet your customer demand.
Right. And how has it been? So now you've transitioned Nigeria, and then you did Germany for a little bit, and now you're in the UK. How has that transition been like for you?
Honestly, now that you mention it, I think it took a while for me to realize that transitions are hard. Like even positive transitions take a toll on you.
Right.
And I didn't realize how difficult moving so many times was. Like I'd lived in Nigeria all my life before I went to Spain, and then Spain to Germany, and Germany to London. And typically that looks good on paper. I tell people like, it's mentally challenging. I remember when I first moved to Spain, it was even the little things that you take for granted, like just walking into a supermarket that you're used to and knowing where to pick your stuff from. And please don't laugh. But for the first couple of months in Spain, I was actually cooking with baking soda because I think one of those days I went to the supermarket and I'm like, oh, what is salt in Spanish? And I don't think maybe I had network, and I remember, sodium, right? Okay, salt is sodium. And I just think maybe something sodium. And I pick it. And then one day, I don't have any complaints to my friend, like, anytime I cook, like it bubbles, like I just put salt and it starts bubbling. I'm like, okay, maybe that's how their salt is in Spain. And then one day, I'm on a video call with a friend, and I'm like, see what I told you, like my stew is bubbling. And it's like, Iri, that's baking soda, is it baking powder?
Oh my God.
So yeah, I said that because even the little things. Yeah. And I was like, God, I can't believe I've been eating baking soda, because I was like, this tastes different. I'm like,
what is different here?
No,
it's not.
No.
Oh,
yeah.
No, so. I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. It's in the little things as well. It's in the big and the little things, right?
Exactly.
That you feel the transition, and it will mentally take a toll for sure.
Yeah, and I'm stressing that because even positive, because I moved to Spain because I wanted to enhance myself and further my education. Exactly. And even moving to London. So London is familiar, right?
Right.
It's Yeah, Anglophone. Yeah, we're Anglophone as well because we're colonized by the British, in
Right.
case anybody didn't know.
Casualties of the British. Hey, my
Exactly.
name is Nancy.
Uh,
Well,
like I said, transitions can be they can be challenging.
right.
So London, I had more roots. I had friends here.
Of
There
course.
was a wave of people moving from Nigeria, so a couple of them were here. So my close friends were here, but it was still hard. And I think another thing that we don't talk about a lot is also that I'm learning because I'm still on a journey is also mid-career, you don't get a lot of support,
Okay.
right? There's all this at the leadership level, there's a lot of leadership
Yeah.
programs, developing leaders. At the entry level, you have like
Yeah, they're
graduate programs.
recruiting
You have,
you. You have,
yeah,
yeah,
but when you're in middle management, people just like, you know what, they
figure it
expect you
out.
to just yeah,
Mm,
and you need to do that. So that was also a struggle for me,
yeah,
right? Especially in a role that I've not done supply chain before.
right.
I did operations because
Mm,
field engineering and sales is operations. I didn't, so that I struggled a bit, I'll be honest,
mm-hmm.
as well, which is again a positive transition that can come with its own sets of
Right.
challenges.
So let's talk a little bit about that, right? So
Mm,
I completely concur with you on you don't have a lot of support and when you're mid-career, and that becomes like a really big block in most companies, right? People who are just sitting here stuck. And in my company, we do grade levels, right? And this grade
mm.
has like a ton of really frustrated people who don't know how to move.
Yeah.
So I'm curious then, how are you thinking about your way of moving through your career right now? Are you using any resources or anything of that nature?
Yes. So let me think. My manager, I don't know if it was them that initiated the mentorship process or I was the one that requested it, but there was a director that I liked how he sounded in meetings,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was like, okay, maybe um, reaching out to him to just have a monthly call could help. It did help in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's not the same when you just have a lot of people at your level figuring things out together,
Right.
which I think was the missing thing in my role as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the only black person in the team, so I think that also comes with its own unique set
Challenges. Mm-hmm.
challenges and nuances. But again, getting a mentor, having a friend at work,
Right.
at my level, but in a different role, also
Mm-hmm.
helped as well.
So peer networking, right? So
Yeah,
peer
here,
networking and then
yeah,
getting a
yeah,
mentor as well. That's interesting. So let me tell you what I did, right? Because I recognize this quite well.
yeah.
Well, my reaction or my solve was a bit more drastic. I formed the women's network at my company.
It's really good.
Right? Yeah.
No, and I cheer you for that because somebody I admire greatly is always saying it's better to like she's not the owner of the code, but she keeps is one of her mantras. It's better to light a candle than to cause the darkness. So if you don't see what you are, you can become it. So
You become it, right?
kudos to you.
But here I still also want to share with you kind of the value of networks, right? That I think you should be looking for. Not only if there are none in your company, go outside of that, right? So I know in London, I don't know if you know, do you know about Girls Talk?
No,
Girls Talk Corporation. We'll share that
no.
information with you. One of the guests a couple of months back told us about that organization, right? So it is a professional organization about women of color in tech, I think, if not in tech, but women of color, professional women of color, right? And I know they do a lot of events in London and also online, but networks will be a really powerful anchor for you, right? Because they help you sort of go and process, especially having been the only Black person in your team, right?
In the team,
Go
yeah,
outside of that to go process and learn from other people how they're navigating.
yeah.
And then, of course, I think agreeing to be on this podcast, that's already immense. You did good.
Thanks, thanks. I'll take it.
This
I'll
is a
take
good
it.
step, right?
Yeah.
Because this is also B2C is also a space and a community for, well, inspiration about
Mm,
where we want to go, how we're doing,
mm,
ideas,
mm.
right? Like we're sharing right now. But it also is a space for you to get to know yourself more. So
yeah, you're right. I do agree with that. In terms of you need to get out. I think what I'm getting, you need to sometimes get out of your own head, because chances are you're not the only one going through whatever it is you're going through. And networks are really good at navigating.
they will help you with that.
This type
And
of
then
thing. So
definitely
totally agree.
mentors as well. Definitely they've played a huge role and continue to play a huge role in my opinions as well. So that's a really good one as well. Good. Love it. Well, Iretide, thank you for sharing your journey and so many nuggets of wisdom along the way, right? And then let's land this plane. Tell me a Black woman that inspires you and why.
I could go on about this. So her name is Mrs. Olajumoke Adenawo.
Okay.
She's an architect. She's a polymath. And what I like about that is she has different expressions. She's very highly cerebral, and intelligence is something I really admire in people. Like, she has a lot of range. So you could be talking about Israel, you could be talking about East Africa, you could be talking about anything, she would have an intelligent opinion about it. So she also loves to mentor women, and I'm part of her network. She really believes in striving for excellence, and believes that excellence is the way sometimes you break some of these barriers or invisible barriers that we have highlighted. She's also a star in her own field. So she's an architect, which is, as you know, a male-dominated field as well. So she knows the stuff. And she started her own firm at the age of 24, in a very, in a country like Nigeria that is, there's a lot of respect. It's a gerontocracy, right? As well. So she really admire for a lot of things. So again, a passion for raising transformational leaders and also giving back to our community as well. So she has this foundation that is also Awesome Treasures. It's called Awesome Treasures Foundation, and helps the community, helps in raising transformational leaders. And she, I think last year or this year was that, I don't recall, but she was also she was the cover of Forbes 50 over 50, so which was very impressive. So she's a very well accomplished woman, and also, I don't want to say winning, but she has in all areas of her life. At least she's happily married. She has two grown men. She's winning in her career, so I think that's
love it.
The kind of future I envision.
She's winning, yes.
Exactly.
You're manifesting all of that, okay?
Exactly. So I deeply admire that about her.
All right, so we will have her in the show notes so people can also witness this amazing woman and be inspired by her.
Exactly.
Iretide, what about a book that you read recently, whenever, that inspired you and why, that you'd like to share with our audience?
So it's Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. It's not a recent novel. I read it when I was much younger. I reread this book, and I did, and it was so profound because the main character, I think what stood out for me is this was a man trying to navigate, change. And is also very set on not being anything like his father. And what was interesting to me is he ends up exactly like his father. So you can be so obsessed with, and it's good to learn, but you can be so obsessed with a goal or whatever it is that you now go the other extreme only to end up where you don't want to be. So that was the takeaway for me from that book. Like, of course, there's still the colonization theme where people come, but I think my key takeaway was just exactly his relationship with his father, and just being the exact opposite of him. His father was very lazy, he was very hardworking, did work hard to get his family, just have a different outcome, but sadly just ends up exactly where he was trying to avoid. Yeah, he died a shameful death like his father, basically.
So is this perspective from your most recent read of it?
Yes.
I think what I find beautiful about rereading books, right? So I think all of us have such Things Fall Apart. When was it written? It was written a long time back.
1954.
We all have read that book. I think for us in Zimbabwe, it was actually part of literature, like classroom. It was a assigned book in literature, right? And everything like that. What I love about rereading books is that you read it one time. So I think back then, right, you're reading it and it's about education and and then now you read it as an adult and you're like, oh, wow, he had so much trauma. Wow. So it makes you reflect. It gives you a different.
Please work on your trauma, people. Please. Work on your trauma so you don't repeat. I think that's the lesson because you just Yeah.
And I do love the lesson of like you can't get so obsessed with the goal if you don't stop and reflect along the way, right? It's okay to be focused, right, on a goal and passionate about it, but stop and reflect and definitely work on your traumas. And another thing I love about that lesson too is I think all of us we're a product of our environments, right, and the experience that have come. And you see that, what was his name again, the main character? Okonkwo, yes. So again, he was trying to run away from an identity that he thought was chasing him. I think acknowledging that and actually then purposely moving.
We will.
Iretide, what's next for you? What's the outlook right now? You're figuring it out, but I'm curious, right?
What that? Yeah. I am figuring it out. I'm back to figuring it out, and I think for the better part of my life, like I said, it's been okay. At this, I want to get this. At this, I want to get this. At this, I want to get this. And for the most part, I think I have. But right now, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. And I think there's some times in life that you just don't know.
And that's okay.
But what is important is at least just keep moving.
Yeah.
Ask for help. It's really important. And I think like we discussed earlier in this podcast, you need to get out of your own head because you realize you're not the only one that maybe feels a certain way or is going through a particular thing. And the only way you share is by being vulnerable, and then others are also able to probably open up to you. But right now, to answer your question, I think I took an interest in cybersecurity recently. I read an article on The Economist on ransomware negotiators. I'm like, really? Is this really a thing? And it was interesting. So I'm taking a course on that. I see where it goes. I think at the core of what I want hasn't changed. I still really like helping and supporting customers, right? But I think I want to do it within the tech space. And I firmly believe that, business should be about adding value to making money. Trust me, I like money. My people will tell you that. But you need to also it shouldn't be primarily about making money, right? You should also add value to people. So I'm trying to figure out where I want to go in terms of like my next role, but ultimately I think those are my anchors, and that would be my North Star.
All right, you have dropped so many gems. I'm just like we've talked like so many different moments of reflection here, right? And I love it. But do you have any last words or 3 pieces of advice that you're like, hey?
One advice is you're not crazy, and why I say that is if deep in your heart you just feel okay, maybe this isn't working or something is off, lean into that and don't just quit that, right? If you're job searching, really pay attention to how you're treated during the interview process, because you can get really carried away by the role, and money is fine, like I said.
Yes.
But then you want to work with people that you think you can grow with, if you're considering that this is where you spend the majority of your time. And I will think maybe the third for my experience is if you genuinely feel that something is not working, and we've talked about that sunk cost fallacy, it's okay to start again, honestly. Time would pass either way. I remember my friend was going for MBA 2 years ago, and I said, oh no, you just did a master's, right? Why would you want to go for an MBA? Can't try and get work. Guess what? She's almost done. So time would go
Mm-hmm.
regardless. If you're interested in pursuing something, just do it.
Yeah.
It's never too
Can we
late.
move regardless? Yeah. This conversation was quite meditative, I must say. And like we had those moments of pause and reflection and looking back.
Yeah, I
I
guess
mean,
so.
we went through chapters of your life right now,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
guess so.
we were unpacking them, and it was like, yeah, that's what you take. And that's all we ever want to share on this podcast. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you, Nancy, for having me. This
Appreciate
was
it.
ultimately a pleasure, honestly. I
Yeah.
didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did.
I'm glad you did. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Nancy, and have a lovely, lovely week.